in Singapore, right, one of the favorite types of investments that we have here is property. And I think this is popularized because of the concept of the 5 Cs. And it's true because many people that I meet actually do want to buy a condo. And so whether or not you belong to the gang where you buy for your own stay and then you plan to later sell and downgrade to HDB upon retirement, or you're the sell one, buy two type, right, at the end of the day, everybody just wants to buy a property. So I think in general, property makes a very good investment in Singapore. If you are the buy one, sell two type, then you really need to know how to pick your properties, right, so that you can really enjoy capital appreciation in the shortest amount of time. However, if you are the kind that actually plan to buy a private property and then just hold on to it and only sell it at retirement to downgrade, then I think capital appreciation is not so much of a concern to you, but you might be concerned about whether or not you have the holding power, which means whether or not your income can sustain the mortgage over the period of your loan. And so that's what we're going to explore a little bit more in this video. So if you ask me, right, I think there are 3 things to consider: the upfront cost, the bank loan, and then how much it takes for you to maintain the condo. So I call this the upkeep basically. So I'm by no means, right, a property expert, and so because of that, right, so whenever I want to look at certain property prices and things like that, I always go and look at this guy that I put here, Eric. So I think one thing he's damn funny, but actually I think he also makes the breakdown very easy for me to understand. So when I was looking around at certain properties, this Lentor mansion caught my eye line. So the 3-bed 2-bath, according to him, is about 1.8 million. So we'll be using that for the calculation. Okay, so to me, the first thing to consider is the upfront cost, which is made up of 3 parts. Okay, the first thing, the most straightforward one is the down payment. 25% of the property value, right? So 5% must be cash, 20% can be CPF lah. So basically 25% of a 1.8 million property is 450,000 right? And then the second part, right, is stamp duty law. So basically there's a whole table you can own self go and calculate, or if you're lazy like me, right, just go to Property Guru, put your numbers in, and then tada, okay, come out $59,600 lah. So of course, if you very rich, you got so many property, then you need to pay ABSD lah, but we take it as don't have lah, okay, for this one. So the third fee that most people will incur are legal fees, between $2,000 to $3,000. So we just take the average $2,500 here. So if we consider all these 3 things together, right, the down payment, the stamp duty, and the legal fees, the upfront cost is $512,100. So it really depends you and your partner, right, how much you have inside CPF lah. So if you're like me, because in the past, right, I used to work as a teacher with MOE. So if you're in your early 30s, you have about 6 to 7 years of work experience, you have somewhere about probably 100K or so in your OA, which you can use to pay this down payment. Okay, so a very quick shameless plug. If you like this kind of content, you can go and follow my Instagram over there. Okay, basically I give this kind of summarized short form version of these videos on my Instagram. So if you are in a rush, you got no time, you just want to remember something, or if you are sitting on the toilet, nothing to do, you want something to scroll, go and follow. Okay, so back to the video. Now, when we talk about bank loans, right, we have to consider 2 things. So 2 things you need to remember. The first one is called your TDSR, Total Debt Servicing Ratio. Sounds very cheap, sounds very long, but you just need to remember 55%. What this means in English, it just means that, right, for every dollar that you earn, 55 cents can be used to pay off all your existing loans. So when they consider your loans, right, it's not just about property loan, this 55%. They consider all the loans that you have. So things like your car payments and things like that will come into factor as well. So you really need to be in a good financial standing before you can even apply for a loan. Now, then the second thing is this thing called the loan to value. Is up to 75%. Basically, this refers to the maximum amount of loan you can get lah. And it depends on things like your age, your credit score, the lease of the property left. So, of course, this means that if you can borrow less money, your LTV is lesser, that means you got to pay more upfront costs. Okay, so if you haven't realized by now, right, I actually really like to use Property Guru lah. So if you can see here this table about the LTV, right, there are many different scenarios. The LTV changes accordingly, and then that also affects your down payment. So you can just go Property Guru and take a look. But I'm just showing you here first lah. Alright, so the third thing we need to consider, right, is the upkeep cost. So apart from paying off the bank loan, we need to pay off 2 other things. The first thing is property tax, right? So actually this one you can go to IRA's website, take a look at their website, and then you can find your property value and things like that there, and then you can estimate your own property tax. But for simplicity's sake, I'm going to use about $1,000 a year, which amounts up to around somewhere $85 a month lah. And then of course there's condo maintenance fee, anywhere between $300 to $700 depending on the condo. So I use the mid-range $500 a month lah. So if we consider these 2 fees, right, the property tax $85 a month, maintenance fee $500 a month, we go back to my favorite website for Property Guru, take a look at some of the loans available. At 2.95%, a 30-year tenure, that would mean that you have to pay $6,200 every month. So you add everything together, the property tax, the maintenance, along with this bank loan, that would amount up to $6,869 every month lah. So this is how much you need to maintain your condo. Now, remember just now we said the TDSR is 55%, right? Of course you can do that, but for me, because of safety concerns or wanting to just have a buffer, I would usually like to use 30%. So if I consider 30%, right, that means my monthly household income needs to be $23,000. This gives me a little bit of a buffer in case anything goes wrong, I have to stop working for a while and things like that. I can still maintain the payment of the condo comfortably. Alright, so now basically I want to talk about some considerations that people have when they buy property. So the first one, right, is whether or not this property is for your own stay or for investment. I think the strategy kind of differs a bit. If it's for your own stay, right, then you're not so concerned about capital appreciation, because as long as you stay long enough, Singapore does well, generally your property will do well. It's just about how much money you make only. Whereas for investment, I think depends whether or not you're looking to rent out, and then you need to see whether or not the rental yield makes sense for you, and then you need to know a good exit strategy if you're planning to basically flip it for a bigger house in 3 years' time lah. And so the second thing, right, is basically, are you comfortable with your liquidity if property is your only or biggest investment lah? Because I say this because a lot of times we try and stretch ourselves out for the loan, and then because of that we are unable to do other investments like bonds lah, or even stocks and things like that. And so we have to understand that property is a very stable, very good investment, but it is at the same time very illiquid. What do I mean is, in case of emergency, if my emergency fund is not enough, I'm able to sell bonds, I'm able to sell stocks to basically deal with the emergency, but I cannot just go and sell my toilet, right? So end up you have to do this thing called a cash out refinance, or take out a home equity line of credit, and then this will basically change your financial situation. So there are a lot more things to consider if you actually need emergency cash law. And then the third thing is whether or not you're comfortable with the loan, and are you able to keep up with the repayments lah. Because especially if you're stretching yourself very thin with the loans, right, if something happens and you cannot work, you got retrenched or things like that, right, whether or not you can keep up the repayment if one of you or both of you actually stop working for a period of time law. And at the same time, I think a lot of people want to retire early. So when you want to retire early, it really depends how this fits into your retirement time frame, and then whether or not this actually makes sense for you. Because if you have to keep paying the loan, keep servicing the loan, means you always have to have a source of income, either actively or passively. So this is something for you to consider as well. So of course at this point, right, a lot of people will tell me, actually if I cannot make payments, then I just sell the house law, which is true. If you can find a buyer, then that's fantastic. But of course, if you are unable to find a buyer, then at least you still need some sort of backup plan, like in case you experience a drop in your income over here lor. So for people who want to get started in property investment, but you feel like you may not have enough money, right, there are actually different investment vehicles that you can use to also invest in property, and I talk more about it in this video over here.